They'll never say it out loud, but silence gets to them. Even the ones who seem untouchable. Even the avoidants who act like they couldn't care less. The truth is, an avoidant doesn't stop missing you because they stopped caring. They stop missing you when you stop chasing. Avoidantly attached people thrive on emotional control. It's their safety net. When you chase, plead, or try to fix the distance, you reinforce their illusion that closeness equals danger and that they're right to retreat. But when you step back, not in anger, not in punishment, but in calm self-possession, you disrupt their entire emotional pattern. Suddenly, they're not the one deciding when connection happens. You are. And that reversal is something they don't know how to process. Avoidants don't miss you in the moment you walk away. They miss you in the stillness that follows, the space where no one's trying to reach them, where their phone stays quiet, and their mind starts to wander. They tell themselves they wanted this distance, but the peace they expected turns into noise. Every unreturned message becomes a ghost of your patience. Every quiet day is an echo of the care they took for granted. You don't make an avoidant miss you by trying to change their mind. You do it by changing the dynamic. The less you fight for closeness, the more they feel the loss of it. Not because they crave control, but because your absence reminds them of what they couldn't control, you. In their world, emotions are things to escape. But when you step out of the chase, you become the one thing they can't outrun, the memory of someone who didn't collapse trying to keep them. That calm, grounded distance becomes magnetic. It's not revenge. It's self-respect. And it's the only language the avoidant truly understands. So stop convincing. Stop proving. Stop chasing what hides from you. The moment you let them feel the weight of their own silence, they'll begin to feel yours. If you want to better understand how to deal with avoidance, then subscribe to the channel to know everything. The avoidant doesn't miss you when you argue, cry, or try to explain yourself. Those moments only confirm what they already believe, that intimacy means losing control. But when you stop reacting, when your emotional tone becomes quiet and self-contained, something unexpected happens. Your calm starts to disturb them. Avoidantly attached individuals rely on predictability. They know how to handle being needed. They know how to handle confrontation. But what they don't know how to handle is indifference that isn't cruel, distance that isn't angry. When you stop trying to reach them, they no longer know their role in your story. The pattern that used to keep them safe, push, retreat, get chased, breaks apart. And in that stillness, they start to feel something they rarely let themselves feel, uncertainty. At first, they'll try to rationalize it away. They're just busy. It's better this way. But avoidance is built on control, and silence takes that control away. You're no longer responding to their distance. You've created your own. They can't measure your interest anymore, can't predict your reaction, can't feel the emotional leverage they're used to having. It unsettles them deeply, even if they act composed on the surface. Soon, they'll start to replay old interactions, what you said, how you looked at them, the last time you pulled away. Not because they suddenly want to change, but because your absence has created an emotional vacuum they can't fill with logic. Avoidants miss you in flashes, at night, when things quiet down, when no one's asking anything of them. That's when the emotions they suppress rise to the surface, and for once, they can't outrun them. Your unpredictability becomes the mirror they can't escape. They start to feel what you used to feel, wondering where they stand, questioning what went wrong, missing the warmth they once dismissed. You don't have to teach them a lesson. Your silence already has. They thought detachment kept them safe. But what really disarms them isn't confrontation, it's peace. Here's the truth avoidants never expect. The moment you stop fighting for a place in their life, you become unforgettable. Not because of what you said or what you did, but because you didn't stay to prove your worth. You left space for them to feel it. Avoidantly attached people are used to emotional patterns that orbit around them. When they pull away, most people react. They panic, explain, or try harder to keep the connection alive. This reinforces the avoidance belief that they hold the power, that they can control closeness without consequence. But when someone doesn't play that game, when someone refuses to beg for attention or tolerate emotional breadcrumbs, their framework collapses. To the avoidant, this kind of emotional independence feels foreign. You're no longer a part of the equation they've mastered. You've become something rare, someone who values peace over persuasion, dignity over desperation. And that disrupts everything. At first, they may tell themselves that you were simply easier to forget. But emotional avoidance isn't built for true indifference. It's built for control. And when they realize they've lost control over how you see them, when they can no longer predict your next move or feel certain of your availability, they begin to miss the sense of security you provided. They miss the person who cared but didn't collapse, who listened but didn't chase. That's how you shift from optional to irreplaceable, not by proving your love, but by proving your boundaries. By showing that your world doesn't stop spinning when they step away. You become a quiet contradiction, someone who was warm but self-contained, connected but free. To an avoidant, that combination is both confusing and magnetic. They'll replay moments in their mind. The way you smiled when you stopped explaining, the calm in your voice when you said, "I understand," instead of "please don't go." They'll think they missed the relationship. But what they really miss is the emotional safety that came from your balance. You don't become irreplaceable by needing them. You become irreplaceable by showing them that love doesn't have to mean losing yourself. Avoidants miss you in silence. You won't see it in their messages, or their eyes, or their words. They'll move through their days as if nothing's changed, calm, detached, self-contained. But beneath that composed exterior, something is stirring. Because missing you doesn't look like need for them. It looks like restlessness. Avoidantly attached people are masters of suppression. They don't deny emotion, they bury it under distraction. When they miss you, they won't reach out. They'll work longer hours, fill their nights with noise, scroll endlessly, convince themselves that solitude equals strength. But every quiet moment betrays them. When they lie down at night, and the world goes still, your name drifts back in like a whisper they can't silence. They won't admit they're thinking about you because vulnerability feels unsafe. To them, longing equals weakness. So they try to reason their way out of it. It wasn't that deep. It wouldn't have worked anyway. But their logic cracks in the places where emotion lingers. In the way a song suddenly stings. In how they avoid certain places because they remind them of you. In that strange emptiness they can't quite label. The more they try to suppress missing you, the more it expands in the background of their mind. Avoidants aren't emotionless, they're emotionally delayed. What you felt at the end, they feel weeks or months later, when it's too late to fix what they pushed away. That's the tragedy of avoidance. They often realize the depth of what they lost only when your silence has become permanent. They'll never text, "I miss you." They'll just linger on your last message. They'll scroll past your name and stop for a second longer than they mean to. They'll tell themselves they're fine, but wonder quietly if you've already moved on. You don't need to break their silence to make them feel yours. Because what they're really missing isn't contact, it's safety. The feeling that with you, they could be both cared for and free. And when that balance is gone, it haunts them in the quiet. They'll never confess it. But they miss you, deeply, privately, endlessly, while acting like they never did. People think avoidants come back because they miss the chase. But that's not true. What pulls them back isn't the thrill of pursuit, it's the memory of safety. The kind of emotional safety they can't find anywhere else. Avoidantly attached individuals don't trust easily, not others, and not even themselves. Their whole emotional system is built on avoiding dependence. They fear being swallowed by love, losing themselves in connection. So, they keep people at arm's length to feel safe. But when someone like you enters their life, someone who gives warmth without pressure, understanding without demand, it creates a paradox. For the first time, closeness doesn't feel like a trap. It feels like peace. That feeling terrifies them, because peace means presence. And presence means they might finally have to face what's inside them. Their fear of rejection, their old wounds, the quiet voice that says they're unlovable if fully seen. So they pull away, not because they don't care, but because they do. Avoidants run when something real begins to reach the parts of them they've spent years guarding. But here's the thing. Once they've felt emotional safety, even for a moment, they can't unfeel it. The calm, grounded energy you brought into their life becomes a reference point. Every future connection feels unstable by comparison. They'll try to recreate that balance elsewhere, but they'll find that most people either chase them or shut down completely. What they miss about you isn't the relationship, it's the stability of your presence. When they circle back, it's rarely dramatic. It might be a casual message, a small comment, a quiet attempt to reconnect. But underneath it lies a deeper search. They're testing to see if that emotional safety still exists. They're hoping you'll still be the calm in their storm, even if they never admit how much they need it. That's why your power lies not in withholding affection, but in embodying peace. You don't punish their distance, you simply refuse to join it. And that quiet steadiness becomes magnetic because it represents everything they fear and crave at once. You don't make an avoidant come back by playing hard to get. You make them come back by being hard to replace. There's a specific silence that hits an avoidant differently, the silence that doesn't come from waiting, but from moving on. At first, they think you'll come back. You always have, right? That's the rhythm they trust. Pull away, get space, and eventually, you reach out. But when the pattern breaks, when your silence isn't a pause but a decision, it destabilizes them in a way nothing else can. Avoidantly attached individuals build their sense of safety on emotional predictability. They rely on others to react, to chase, to restore balance when they withdraw. It keeps them in control, allows them to feel powerful without being vulnerable. But when you stop playing that role, when you stop texting first, stop checking in, stop showing up, they're forced to face what they've been avoiding all along. The reality that connection doesn't wait forever. At first, they'll rationalize your absence. They're probably busy. They'll reach out eventually. It's denial disguised as calm. But time is a mirror they can't hide from. Days turn into weeks, and that quiet you left behind begins to echo. The relief they thought they'd feel from distance transforms into unease. They start to wonder, did I push too far this time? Did I misread them? Avoidants don't fall apart publicly, they unravel privately. You won't see it in their stories or their words. But they'll replay conversations, scroll through old messages, notice the gap you left in the small routines of their life. They'll feel that ache, not as loss at first, but as confusion, because losing you wasn't supposed to feel this way. You were supposed to still be there, waiting in the wings. And when it finally hits, that you're not, it's not just sadness they feel. It's regret, a kind of hollow realization that they mistook distance for strength when all it did was cost them something real. They'll wonder if they could have been different, if maybe they should have stayed when things got close. But by then, the power dynamic has shifted completely. The control they once clung to has turned into powerlessness. They can't undo what their silence created. They can only sit in the emptiness of their own making and finally feel what they've spent their life avoiding: loss. And that, ironically, is the moment they start to understand love. When an avoidant starts to feel the emptiness of your absence, their instinct isn't to rush back, it's to test the temperature. They'll reach out in quiet, indirect ways, searching for clues that it's safe to reapproach without losing face. To you, it might look like mixed signals. To them, it's survival. Avoidantly attached people don't handle vulnerability directly. They re-enter connection through control. That's why, instead of saying, "I miss you," they'll send something neutral, an old inside joke, a casual, "Hey, how have you been?" as if the past never happened. They're not being manipulative, they're gauging your reaction. They want to know if you'll open the door without demanding an explanation. If you respond with calm, grounded energy, neither cold nor overeager, it disarms them. It tells them you're safe. That connection doesn't have to mean losing independence. But if you come in with resentment or emotional urgency, it confirms their fear. Intimacy equals chaos. That fear is all it takes for them to retreat again. What most people don't realize is that avoidants are deeply observant. They pick up on tone, timing, and subtle shifts in your energy. They'll notice if your replies feel light or loaded, if your words carry expectation. They're not testing your love, they're testing emotional safety. To them, love isn't the issue, it's trust. Can they be close without feeling trapped? Can they reach for you without losing themselves? Their reappearance will rarely look like reconciliation. It'll come in fragments, checking your social media, asking mutual friends about you, liking old photos. Each small gesture is a quiet attempt to see if the door is still open. And when they finally do speak directly, it'll sound casual, but inside, it's anything but. That message, that "how have you been?" might have taken them hours, even days, to send. The key in those moments is balance. Don't punish their reach, but don't reward inconsistency either. Show warmth, but stay steady. Show interest, but stay rooted in your boundaries. Let them see that connection doesn't require control. Because the truth is, they don't come back for reassurance, they come back for safety. And if you can meet them there, without losing yourself again, that's when something real can begin. Distance might get their attention, but consistency is what transforms it. Avoidants don't change because they're abandoned. They change because someone shows them that closeness can exist without danger. For most of their life, avoidantly attached people have associated love with loss of control. They grew up believing that intimacy meant intrusion, that needing someone made them weak. Every time they were pushed to open up, it felt like a demand instead of a choice. So they built a defense: distance, independence, detachment. It's not arrogance, it's protection. When you respond with calm steadiness instead of volatility, you begin to rewrite that belief. Consistency teaches them that love doesn't have to explode or disappear. It can stay, it can breathe, it can feel safe. That stability begins to soften the edges of their defenses, not because you pushed, but because you didn't. You held space. You didn't chase their silence, and you didn't weaponize your own. You stayed emotionally anchored, and that becomes something they can finally trust. Avoidants notice patterns more than promises. They're not moved by words. They're moved by the absence of chaos. When they realize that your energy doesn't spike with their withdrawal, that your peace doesn't depend on their presence, it disarms them. Suddenly, connection feels like a choice, not a threat. It's in that space that genuine intimacy starts to grow, not through grand gestures, but through emotional reliability. You answer when you mean to, speak when it matters, and hold boundaries without guilt. This rhythm teaches them something their nervous system never believed possible. Closeness can coexist with freedom. That's when the avoidant begins to relax. Their texts become less guarded, their tone softer. They start sharing fragments of emotion, small truths, quiet admissions, little signs of trust. It's subtle, but it's real. Because change doesn't happen when you pull away to punish them. It happens when your steadiness shows them a different model of love, one that doesn't demand, doesn't disappear, and doesn't control. You don't heal an avoidant by breaking their walls down. You heal them by showing them they no longer need them. You'll know it's happening not through a grand confession, but through small, almost fragile moments. A sentence that lingers longer than usual. A quiet, "I don't usually talk about this." The avoidant opening up isn't loud. It's trembling honesty wrapped in hesitation. It's the moment they stop performing calm and start revealing truth. Avoidantly attached people don't wake up one day suddenly healed. Their walls don't fall, they soften. They begin to test safety in real time. Sharing something personal, watching how you respond, seeing if the space stays safe afterward. Every time you meet their vulnerability with presence instead of pressure, their nervous system rewrites a little more of its old story. That love means control, that openness means loss. Reconnection with an avoidant is slow, almost imperceptible. They might reach out more, not out of need, but out of comfort. Their communication grows warmer, their silence is shorter. They start saying "we" without realizing it. But even then, fear still lingers. Sometimes, after opening up, they'll pull back again, not because they've lost interest, but because their old reflexes kick in. Vulnerability still feels dangerous. This is where your steadiness matters most. You don't chase their distance or punish their retreat. You remain consistent, showing through action that safety doesn't vanish when they flinch. Over time, this rhythm teaches them something revolutionary. That connection doesn't have to mean self-erasure. They can love without losing autonomy. They can stay without suffocating. You'll notice subtle changes. They start to ask about your day with genuine care, reach out without reason, or mention something that mattered to you weeks ago. These are small, sacred signals. Each one says, "I'm trying. I'm learning how to stay." Avoidants don't fall in love through intensity. They fall through trust, through the quiet realization that you didn't leave when they shut down, and you didn't chase when they ran, that you understood the storm without trying to fix it. And that's what breaks through where words never could. Because when an avoidant finally lets you in, it's not just love, it's surrender. Not to you, but to themselves. To the idea that they can be known and still be safe. The final truth is this: you can't fix an avoidant, and you're not meant to. The moment you start trying to heal them at the expense of yourself, you become what they unconsciously expect, someone who carries the emotional weight for two. Love doesn't survive there. It burns out. To truly connect with an avoidant, you have to stay anchored in your own worth. That means loving them from choice, not fear. You don't hold on because you're afraid to lose them. You stay only as long as the connection nourishes peace in both of you. Boundaries aren't walls. They're reminders that you exist outside their silence. You have a self, a rhythm, a life that doesn't pause just because they need space. And paradoxically, that's what keeps them closest. Avoidants are drawn to emotional strength, not control. When you remain centered, clear in your values, calm in your reactions, steady in your love, you create the one thing they crave but can't articulate: safety without captivity. You model the kind of relationship their nervous system never believed was possible, one where love breathes instead of binds. But remember this: if connection starts to cost you your peace, it's no longer connection, it's repetition. Repetition of old wounds, old chases, old cycles. You break the pattern not by outsmarting them, but by choosing yourself every time. You show them, through action, what healthy love looks like. Love that listens, but doesn't shrink. Love that stays open, but not at the expense of truth. Whether they come closer or drift away, your power remains the same. You are not waiting. You are living. You are not proving. You are being. And from that grounded place, love stops being about who misses whom. It becomes about mutual respect, emotional freedom, and the quiet courage to stay only where both hearts can breathe. Because making an avoidant miss you was never about control. It was about remembering that the most magnetic energy of all is peace. So keep your calm. Protect your boundaries. And if this message resonated with you, if you've ever loved someone who ran from the very thing they craved, share this with someone who needs to hear it. Comment your story, subscribe for more, and never forget, your peace is the love they'll never forget.